There's no path going there, so we have to go down here.
Sergio, let's talk about Ron Logan.
All right. So the statement that I looked at from Ron Logan was that very grainy recording that was done covertly. And I will say that the questions that were asked were phenomenal. I mentioned that a couple of times in my video. And I wish that half of the interrogators were as good as, I don't know what that lady's name is or who she was, but it was really impressive the way that she followed up and asked direct questions. That is how I was able to get the information that I did, because when statements are as short as this one, it's often hard to get good information if the questions aren't good, because I need the question to actually activate the memories around the incident in question. And if they don't do that, then I don't end up with good information. But we did get some good information here. So just to recap, I mean, I'm sure if you're watching us here, you probably saw the video. So there was a couple of places where he had some missing information in there. And that missing time, what I call missing time or missing information, is very key in cases like this, because when you know definitively that somebody has information that they feel is incriminating and they remove it from what they're saying, that's very important information. So there was some missing information around his alibi statement. And again, I want to reiterate to everybody, I know that when I'm doing this analysis, it can seem like I know a lot about the case or about the person, but I really don't have a good grasp on the evidence, on who's been looked at. Everything I know from this case is based on talking to Amy here over a very short period of time after I did the Keegan Klein video. So I pointed some stuff out about his alibi, that he cut out some information there. And then there was one area of my video that I think is pretty humorous. If you've been following the case for a while, you probably thought I had lost my mind. But when I was looking at the part where he's talking about Pat Brown finding the bodies, there's no reference to the bodies. Initially, they're talking about clothing. And so for the next 5 questions, I thought we were just talking about clothing that had been found. And when I went back afterwards, I realized that they were actually talking about finding the girls' bodies down there, which made everything much worse because it was the bodies and not just the clothing. So
that I found potentially seminal fluid. Okay, there's spermatozoa, there's seminal plasma, there's fructose, which is a sugar, there's prostaglandins, there are clotting proteins, there are flavins, there are amino acids, there's citrate, prostate-specific antigen. Most males will know about PSA because they go for a prostate test. There's acid phosphatase, amylase, zinc, alkaline mucus. So there are a huge number of components in seminal fluid. So what the hell did Stacey test? Right? There's something bizarre. You're saying, hey, I've got seminal fluid, but I can't get a DNA profile. So what the hell's going on? There are confirmatory tests. There's the Christmas tree stain, which is a color test for sperm. There's an RSID test for semen, which is a rapid stain identification. And the obvious thing to do is stick it under a bloody microscope, right? If you think you got sperm there, you take a sample, put it under a microscope and you go, oh my God, I see sperm. But now the state is in this bizarre situation where they're going, I think there's seminal fluid. There's no evidence of any sexual assault. We can't get a DNA profile. what the hell's going on? Here are examples in which a male can produce seminal fluid but no sperm. There are conditions, medical conditions. One of them is called obstructive azoospermia, which means there's a blockage in the tubes that carry the sperm from the testes to the penis. So you're not going to produce any sperm or very, very little sperm. This one is controversial. So I don't think any of these were discussed during the trial, but I'm sure that in a post-conviction, they're going to ask the question, well, do you know whether Richard Allen had a vasectomy? Did he have any of these conditions?
I'm going to drop the bomb, and I have confirmed through direct sources from his wife that Richard Allen has not had a vasectomy.
Anyway, so there is a weighting rule of 10 that people who like to, fly fish or, just trout fish in streams like that, they will use to determine if a river or crossing is too dangerous for a grown adult who is 6 foot, 180 pounds to cross. So we're going to just kind of put up some numbers here just to kind of showcase this. We're going to assume that a crossing is 65 feet, and we'll take that gauge reading nearby, measured at 574 cubic feet per second, CFS, and we're limited in data regarding the depth. So we assume the discharge rate is constant, which is really consistent with how rivers work, because as you get downstream, unless it widens up or gets a lot more thin, not shallow, then you're going to have the same discharge rate, and it will usually just increase as you go downstream. So the depth in this matters mostly for where Abby and Libby's center of gravity was, how high it was up on their bodies, and basically it matters mostly in that respect. So like after a certain point, after like 2.3 feet, I believe that's what we said that their waist would be at, it's kind of a moot point. However, we can kind of gauge how, if it does change in depth, based entirely on the width of the creek, because we know that downstream it will likely be 574 cubic feet per second unless it gets wider or thinner.
As the information's coming in, we've been able to readjust just slightly most of the times of Betsy Blair, Rayleigh Voorhees, and all that lot, where they were at certain times. For instance, we've had it confirmed that Rayleigh Voorhees and the rest of her group didn't go straight to the bridge. They did turn down onto the Mary Gerard Reserve. And of course, that leaves a big hole in which they were off the trail. Betsy Blair, although she walked up the trail several times and back down again, never saw that group of girls. The timing now says that she was passing them while they were off the trail.
These groups of people had reported incorrect times, even if it was by 2 to 3 minutes. It shifts this whole timeline one way or the other.
It does. A couple of minutes either way, and you're talking about a different group of girls.
Correct. And that's why we're doing the best that we can do to narrow down and give you guys the various alternatives of these timelines. And you guys are critical thinkers. You guys are smart people. You can obviously screenshot this grid here in this timeline, look it over for yourselves and see if you can poke holes in it. Richard Allen needs you to do that. Abby and Libby need you to do that. If we have the right guy, we got the right guy. But Abby and Libby, based on the investigation in this case and based on the way this case was handled, they deserve someone to make sure that it was gotten right.